long time ago, Doom clones were a very popular thing. WAD files were made and the Doom engine was modified for a lot of different games. One of which was something that you could only get by buying cereal boxes. That old non-violent shooter is what we're going into today, Chex Quest. It's something I saw being played at a friend's house and didn't realize a remake had happened much later on, and was available on Nintendo's hybrid console. But it is, so let's take a look. Here is my review of Chex Quest HD for the Nintendo Switch. The story of this game is about a volcano erupting on a distant planet, bringing with it strange life forms that eat nutritional cereal and transform into phlegmoids, giant mucus monsters immune to all weapons. As a result of this threat, the Chex Mix Squadron is sent to deal with it with special weapons that transport the phlegmoids back to their original dimension. And that's pretty much it. This is an advertisement for Chex Mix, as it was in the original 1996 game, and it is a comedic little adventure where the characters you play as, based on different food items that appear in Chex Mix, comment on things like saving cereal for children, draining pools of milk so the milk doesn't go bad, and the like. It's a goofy little story and a little more. When it comes to gameplay, this is a first-person shooter in the old Doom-like style. As you play, you'll navigate 3D areas, opening doors with card keys and fighting off enemies with transporting blaster weapons. Now first of all, this is a remake of the old 1996 advertisement game Chex Quest that you could get in select cereal boxes. Instead of being a Doom conversion, the remake is fully 3D made with Unreal Engine 4. It features the same levels and most of the same enemies and items, but made in proper 3D and not just being a Doom clone. And as much of a one-to-one remake as it seems to be, there are a few little differences between them. For example, the larva enemy shows up in this remake while it didn't appear in the original series until Chex Quest 2. The Switch version is also caught up with the PC version, giving it a single-player campaign, local co-op and versus options, and you can play as any character you wish of the roster from the start, unlike when the game initially came out in 2020, requiring cheat codes from Chex Mix products. The campaign is remarkably similar to the original. Each of the 5 levels is a 3D area made up of doors and different rooms. Your goal is to reach the end by exploring the map, taking out enemies, and finding colored card keys to open doors that require it. Basically the old Doom formula. I wouldn't call this game quite the maze fest as Doom, but there is a little bit of that here. You'll always be exploring and find a blue, red, or yellow card key door, needing to move around the level and find that key before moving forward. They're all pretty easy to find, the only tricky one being a robot you find at the end of a path in one of the mid-levels, at which point you can't really fight him, but you've got to go up and interact with him like you interact with a door to open his chest piece and reveal the key. All the others are just laying around at the end of pathways and rooms. The combat is also pretty simple. You've only got about half a dozen different enemies to deal with, most of which are melee fighters. So just shoot them from a distance to defeat them, aka transporting them back to their own dimension. After all, this is a kids game, and we all know that we can't have kids playing games where people get shot at and die, right? Right? Anyways, it's all a matter of ammo preservation and keeping enemies away from you. There's only one enemy outside of the final boss that can actually shoot projectiles. They don't show up until the late game, and it isn't really that hard to avoid their very slow slime balls once you fight them a couple times. Though I won't say the game doesn't have difficulties, and that comes from how it controls. You do have a freely moving camera for aiming towards enemies, but the game feels a bit clunky, both with movement and moving around. This is partially a Switch thing, but it feels a bit awkward like this on PC as well. I found myself more often than not just sticking the reticle to one place and moving the enemies into position by walking around, like you had to do in the old Doom games. There's also a matter of a save system or a lack thereof. You cannot save your progress in this game. You go through the entire level and unlock the next when you beat it. If you die mid-level, you do the whole thing again. Granted, they're not that long, but still. Speaking of not long, the whole game isn't that long either. Even with getting lost, you probably won't spend more than a couple of hours on this game. You can replay with other characters for different endings, but the gameplay will be pretty much the same, outside of dialogue each character says as they go through the levels, and a slightly extended ending if you make it to the game with 100% completion. Next, let's dive into presentation. Visually, I think the game looks good. There aren't all that many jaggies you see around the models, and it's pretty smooth and colorful. The issues with presentation are not with the way the game looks, but how it plays. This is known for being a bad Switch port, and while I won't say it's fantastic, it isn't as terrible as people like to say. The game runs a smooth frame rate for a lot of the adventure, dropping frames and getting a bit choppy during elevator sequences. It's playable, but not great. The main problem is just level 2 storage facility. This level has consistent frame drops for most of its areas, making platforming a bit difficult to do when you have to ride said platforms from room to room and get to where you need to go for unlocking doors and accessing keys. This was a bit of a task for me to get through, though all of the other levels are fine on frame rate, only having small areas or transitions with drops. Another thing I noticed was that getting Fred's ending had the audio play for his ending, but none of the visuals would show up on screen. It was just a black screen while the dialogue was playing. Honestly, I thought something had happened to my TV, but it was just the game. Now, alternatively, if you have a Steam Deck, Legion Go, or other handheld PC, you can grab the game off of Steam for free. Even the original Steam Deck will get a pretty much non-stop 60 frames per second, including the storage facility level that gives the Switch version all those drops. And that brings us to battery life. Chex Quest HD gives the original and light models a battery range of 3.5 to 4.5 hours, while the V2 and OLED models get 6 to 8 hours. In conclusion, Chex Quest returned to the gaming world in the form of a remake that retains the original levels and makes a game that I'm not sure I would call great, but it's certainly entertaining and as wacky as the simple concept of let's make a shooting game so it can be an advertisement for Chex Mix. Now on the downside, there are frame drop issues and ending cinematics not showing up when they should. But if you can deal with the frame drops or grab it for the Steam Deck, it's an interesting revival of that one time a Doom clone was packaged in a box of cereal. Reviews to go rates Chex Quest HD for the Nintendo Switch a 6.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.